Een goede middag en welkom allemaal op deze nieuwe vrijdagmiddag DCDW online event. Wat we gaan organiseren vandaag samen met een drietal sprekers. 2 uit Amerika en 1 uit Canada. En waar we het natuurlijk gaan hebben over de online automotive en wat hun voor content hebben om ons allemaal te helpen om daar ook beter in te worden. We gaan vandaag spreken met Michael Cirillo uit Canada. Onder andere de presentator van de grootste podcast van de wereld in automotive gebied, business to business, de dealer Playbook. We gaan het hebben met Bob Lanham van Facebook, oftewel Meta, de head of Automotive van Facebook, die dealers en OEM's helpt om beter gebruik te maken van de platformen van Facebook. En als laatste David Spisak, rond 4:15, een oud Mercedes dealer, de mentor onder andere van Brian Benstock, waarmee we het gaan hebben over de markt zoals die nu is en hoe de wereld zich nu begeeft en op welke manier je eigenlijk daar gebruik van zou kunnen maken. Dat gaan we vandaag allemaal behandelen. Nou, uiteraard hebben we eerst nog wat tijd voor wat huishoudelijke mededelingen. Onder andere ons event, wat we eigenlijk de afgelopen 18 en 19 januari zouden organiseren met Brian Pesch. Dat gaan we nu organiseren op 23 en 24 maart. En dat gaan we doen uiteraard met Brian, die komt dan langs. En we gaan eerst naar Almere op de 23ste. En daarna gaan we op de 24ste naar Gent. En je zult zometeen wel een plaatje zien waarop je je kan aanmelden voor de beide events. En uiteraard zijn beide events gratis voor dealers, voor autobedrijven en leasemaatschappijen en natuurlijk ook de importeurs. Daarnaast, 2022 is net begonnen. We zijn bijna een maand in het jaar. Ik hoop dat jullie een goede start hebben gedaan. Een goede start hebben gehad ook van het jaar. En natuurlijk was het best wel lastig om met een lockdown te beginnen. Ook al heb ik natuurlijk heel veel mensen gesproken die zeiden van joh, eigenlijk past het me wel. Die lockdown, het zorgt ervoor voor een gestructureerde omgeving om te werken. Met veel afspraken van mensen die langskomen, waarvoor je ook de tijd hebt. En eigenlijk zou je die periode eigenlijk ook wel willen continueren. Oftewel, je wilt het eigenlijk ook gaan doen op het moment dat je geen lockdown hebt. En dat is iets waar we natuurlijk met z'n allen aan moeten werken. En voor degenen die live op dit moment meekijken via LinkedIn of YouTube of Facebook, laat wat van je horen. Ik vind het leuk om te zien wie er zijn, wat jullie aan het doen zijn, zodat we ook het gesprek en de communicatie op zo'n manier kunnen vervolgen, zodat we met elkaar in gesprek ook kunnen komen. Heb je dus ook vragen aan Bob Lanham van Facebook of van Michael Cirillo, laat het mij dan ook weten via de chat, zodat ik deze ook aan de heren kan stellen, om elkaar te helpen in goede vragen, om te zorgen dat we de content kunnen krijgen die we eigenlijk van elkaar willen hebben. En dan wil ik nu introduceren Michael Cirillo. Michael is, zoals ik al vertelde, de presentator van de dealer Playbook. En natuurlijk te downloaden via Spotify, via iTunes, via SoundCloud onder andere. En dat doet hij volgens mij al 9 jaar. Hij deed het eerst met Robert Wiseman als de co-host. Maar de afgelopen 8 jaar geloof ik al alleen. En er is geen betere radiostem dan die van Michael. Hij is er eigenlijk ook voor geboren in de periode waarin podcasten natuurlijk helemaal niet groot was hij al degene die eigenlijk al heel veel content maakte voor ons om uiteindelijk ook online die automotive natuurlijk beter te maken. En Michael heb ik ontmoet op de NEDA. Toen ik bij een stand was, kwam hij naar me toe en die zei van joh, ik zou je graag in de podcast willen hebben. Ik kende hem, hij kende mij van een aantal artikelen in het Nederlands die hij natuurlijk niet kon lezen. En toen zei hij van kom naar onze podcast, dan gaan we een interview doen. En daarna kwam Michael ook naar Amsterdam voor een presentatie. En Michael, you didn't understand anything about my introduction, but it was a really good introduction.
Where do I send the money?
Nowhere. Nowhere.
Well, I did hear my name, and I heard Robert Wiseman, and I heard NADA, and I can only imagine. I'm piecing things together, but I'm excited to be here with you.
Yeah, I remember it when I came to the booth from a man with an orange tie. As a Dutchman, I like orange, and then a guy which is smaller than me, not that tall as me, came to me and said, "Hey, I know you, and I want to have you as my guest on my podcast." And that started the whole thing, right?
You've been here for very transformative moments in my life, and yes, you are right. It throws me off guard when we embrace and you're hugging the air because you're so much taller and I'm hugging your knee. But yes, it seems like just yesterday that we met for the first time. And then of course you've been a very big blessing in my life. You've given me very many opportunities for which I'm grateful.
I didn't do anything of that. It was you all along, and you know that for sure.
No, come on. But you know what's interesting though is the first time that I came to Europe and you brought me to Europe, I'll never forget. We had a meeting at one of the automakers, and while I don't know if you remember this, but as we were driving to the automaker, we passed the Tesla. I think it was a Tesla factory or some sort of Tesla building. And I remember looking out the window and saying to you, "I would love to drive one of those." And you remember what you said to me, Paul? You said, "Why would you want to drive one of those? That's what all the taxi drivers are driving." You remember that?
Yeah.
And what it makes me think of is, look at what's happening in the automotive industry in North America now. What's everybody talking about? EV, electrification, building the infrastructure for electrification. And now I'm starting to realize that Europe might have been several years ahead of this conversation. So much so that taxi drivers are driving EVs and they're not necessarily the thing.
No, but it's actually also tax driven. They came with a less price tag than the Mercedes they normally drive, because I had that same conversation with Brian 4 years before that, when he saw that all the taxis in Amsterdam were all Mercedes-Benz. Right. And if you want to drive a Mercedes-Benz, then you order a taxi, right? And that was the same conversation, but it will say something else. I was at an event in November in Florida with Brian, and we had a meeting with some 12 dealerships in a private meeting with Brian Benstock, with Kevin Fry, etc. And one of the topics was the EV. And the way those dealers talk about the EV was giving me a feedback role for 7 years ago, where we had that same conversations. And they didn't know what is going to be the normal thing. And the EV will be the normal thing. And you don't have to be, you don't need a cord from your apartment to the car, etc. And that struck my mind that sometimes we are way ahead, and sometimes we are way the other way ahead.
Yeah, it certainly can feel that way at times. I think it's really interesting what we're seeing right now. In particular, I was able to watch the presentation by Chevrolet at CES, where they announced essentially their plans, where they introduced or showcased the new Chevrolet truck, the Silverado EV, and all of its features. But there was something that I thought was really interesting, is that they also then took that conversation about electrification and immediately migrated into autonomy, where they showed one of their concept cars, which was basically, what did it look like? It looked like a first-class airliner on the inside with 2 comfy seats and a big screen and all of these sorts of things. And I thought, that's really interesting, because I think sometimes when we get to the dealer network, we're not necessarily fully part of the conversation that's happening at the automaker level or at the lobbyist level.
Mhm.
And sometimes it can appear that the new exciting news just sort of came up.
Yeah.
Like the automakers said, oh man, pandemic and stay at home, and maybe we should get on the EV thing. But when I interviewed Mike Colleron, who's an executive vice president at Nissan Global, he said to me that they've been thinking about it for at least 2 decades.
20 years. Yeah.
At least, right? And
Yeah,
so that
at
gives us some indication, at least from a dealer perspective, that gives us some indication about how far into the future OEMs and manufacturers are actually thinking.
Yeah.
But then, because we know we may not necessarily always be brought to that conversation, we need to think about, at our level, where the rubber meets the road, direct to consumer, we need to think about, how far are we looking into the future? How far ahead are we creating strategies so that we can meet the demands of the market, and so that we can get a real grasp of how things work specifically in our area?
Yeah.
I'll tell you, across Canada, a lot of the information is based off of the major metropolitan areas: Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal. But majority of Canadians are spread out across the countryside in smaller, very much smaller markets, maybe 5 to 10,000 people. And what we see with them is that things, while moving in the same direction, are moving not as quickly.
Slowly. Yeah.
They're moving much slower.
No, but
And the dealer can't actually, he needs to be able to meet the demand of his market and accommodate, so that he's not so far ahead that he misses the business that's right in front of him. And I think that's one of the big things that I really, hope as business owners we're considering is, where do I want to get to, but where am I at today? And how can I make incremental adjustments to my process, to the way, to my culture, to my people, to my community, so that there's a constant flow of business opportunity coming back to me.
Yeah, but also when you talk about the rural population, right? And we have that same discussion in a tiny country as ours, 70 million people still. But sometimes the OEMs thinks that everything what happens in Amsterdam is the normal way the country behaves, and that's not the reality as well, because Amsterdam is a thing at its own.
Right.
The country, 85% or 90% of the population will act differently. On the EV standpoint, the benefit of staying far behind what the American dealers now are, or Canadian dealers are, is that you don't need to do the same mistakes we are making for the last 10 years. For example, the OEMs think that an EV should be sold without any margin, and that you need to make the margin on something else. So Dutch dealers here are making a profit on selling the solar system, the socket on the house, etc., the turbocharger, etc. They make all kind of money on all the topics except for the car. And then the whole dynamics that they are saying, hey, an EV doesn't need maintenance at all. No, it don't need maintenance like oil, but it will eat your tires by the minute instead of another car. So you get other maintenance instead of the normal maintenance.
Yeah.
So with that kind of mind, then you expect actually, and that's the conversation you have many times, that people are jumping on the opportunity more faster than they are.
And what's interesting about that is, if you compare that model to the rest of the marketing world, it's backwards. And what I mean by that is, anywhere else in marketing, anywhere else in e-commerce, there are mechanisms to get a customer in the door with a low barrier to entry offer. We call it a tripwire. We see this all the time. I'm sure you and those joining us today have seen this, where they go to a landing page and it says for just $7, for just €7, you can get the guide that's going to teach you how to do. And then what happens? You pay, you get the course or the material. And what is the purpose of that course or material? It's to get you to buy the higher priced item.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, you've spent €1,000 on something that you didn't know, you weren't expecting it, but because they warmed you up along the way. What you've just described on the EV side in Europe is we're trying to sell one of the most expensive things to get people in the door, when really we should be considering what can we do to get people in the door before that, to build a relationship before that, so that we can actually sell it for some margin. However, there is another element, Paul, and that is the long-term value of that customer. And I think it's about finding a balance. How do I attract people and give them the thing that they want so that I can sell them my services, my other products, an ongoing service contracts and things of that nature, because that is a very real part of the deal. Now, generally speaking, in North America, what do? We sell them the vehicle, and then we're not so good at selling them service, parts, any of those sorts of things. And then we're giving up our ability to do that to the Minute mufflers and the Jiffy Lubes and Penske's, that, all of those sorts of things. And so I think it's about finding a balance on how do I attract a customer and build a relationship with them pre-sale, so that I have a greater chance of increasing the lifetime value of that customer post-sale.
And keeping that customer for life, actually. On the other hand, if you are selling EVs with the solar, etc., are you selling a car, or do you sell a different life?
Right.
A different life, meaningful, that you care for the environment, etc.
Right. And I mean, here's my controversial statement of the day, Paul. You know me, I've got to throw one of these in there. The challenge that I see right now is infrastructure. That doesn't mean they're not going to figure it out. But what I mean by that, since you've talked about the environment, if you look at Canada, for example, with, I think, a contribution of 2% to the global carbon emissions of the planet. When you look at what we've done, and don't get me wrong, I love the planet. I'm not throwing garbage out my window. You know what I mean? But when you look at that, a large part of the plan to reduce carbon emissions from Canada is to go electric. But what's happening is then we are migrating our carbon emissions to whatever country is going to mine the lithium for the batteries. And so we're going to see that country, whoever mines the lithium, we're going to see their carbon emissions go up. But we're in Canada, we're going to go, oh, but look, we reduced our carbon emissions because we went to electric. And so, I think we need to, all things considered, we need to look at the roadmap to EV. We need to see it for what it really is. Yes, I think there's a long-term play where we'll figure out recycling and we'll figure out how to do cleaner, mining and things of that nature. But right now, there's also opportunities right in front of us. For example, you look at Carvana, you look at Vroom, you look at some of the interesting things that Meta, Facebook is doing with Metaverse and the development economy that's being created there. There's opportunities right in front of our face. Sure, I'm sure Carvana or similar companies are interested in electrification, and at some point will sell those vehicles. But what are they doing today? They're removing friction from the customer buying process, and they're bringing accessibility. Like, this is the age of accessibility. We need to make ourselves as accessible as possible to customers so that we can meet them where they're at today.
But Michael, when you talk about Carvana, for example, and being accessible, etc.,
Right.
The website is not accessible from Europe. You cannot visit the website from here.
That's because North America doesn't care about Europe. I'm just kidding.
No, I know, and it doesn't matter who's in that White House. If this is
Right.
the Muppet or the grandfather, I don't care either.
Right.
But what we see the last week is that Carvana is not making their promises true, and that they are taking a lot of their market share value down, and that there are talks about a Ponzi scheme.
I know. I've seen all of that, and I think it is interesting. Time always tells the truth, doesn't it? But the one thing that I would highlight, because it's not so much about Carvana as much as it is the desire to remove as much friction from the buying process as possible. Carvana could crash and burn. I don't know anybody there. It's not going to change my life, but it's just kind of an example of where things are going. Now, having said that, if it is a Ponzi scheme, they should definitely stop that. But the point really that I'm trying to make is not so much them as much as it is that model of direct to consumer, give them what they want, no haggle, no negotiation. Here's the price we're going to pay for the vehicle. We're going to pick it up. We're going to deliver your new vehicle. If you want to come to one of our vending machines, great. As far as everything else, crash and burn and all of those things, here's what I would say, Paul. It's about us as businesses taking a hard look in the mirror. That's what we need to do today. We need to take a hard look in the mirror at every point of our process. And we, not Carvana, we need to remove as much friction from the customer experience as we possibly can. If we can do that just bit by bit, it doesn't need to happen overnight. Just a little bit at a time, make improvements and talk to our customers and really genuinely ask, how was your experience?
Yeah.
What could we improve today? What would have made it even better for you? And we make those small improvements. That's all I'm really suggesting is what we need to be focused on, because in the age of accessibility, if we're not hyper focused on the customer more so than we've ever been, we're going to miss some opportunities, and somebody's going to try and provide a solution to the market like Carvana. Now, as far as them kind of crashing and burning, my father taught me a valuable lesson, Paul. Do not interrupt your competitors when they are busy making mistakes.
No, that's actually a very deep thought.
Right?
I have to remember that one.
Yeah,
I have to remember that one. Maybe I'm always too much in that grind that I want to tell them that they are screwing up, right? And if I have to be silent more.
I've caught myself where I go, look at what they're doing, these idiots. What are they thinking?
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't really help anything if I'm not seeking to improve myself. But you know what else is really interesting on the climate of the market? How many years has it been since I came over there? 4, 5, 6? I can't remember.
No, about 7 years, I think.
7 years, too long.
You were the first guest we have to put in a soccer stadium because all the crowds.
See, just everybody went, who is that handsome, short?
Yeah, short, yeah.
Fat, but you remember part of the conversation back then was about the importance of building relationships of trust. And in an online age, how do we do that? Much of what we discussed 6, 7 years ago is now right back at the forefront of what people are suggesting that we do. Build authority, answer their questions, the importance of creating content that educates and removes barriers, in particular, being upfront about your buying process and about your unique value to the market. It's really easy to say, I'm the number one, Lexus store in Amsterdam, rated Amsterdam. It's really easy to say that. But here's the challenge. In the age of accessibility for customer and being hyper-focused on customer, What we need to remember, in my opinion, is that the customer will buy something when they feel understood, not when you think they understand you.
No, it is. But do you see that move, what Carvana and Vroom is trying to do in a scalable way? Do you see also very good examples on the dealer level?
You know what? There are some dealers who are doing a really good job. And of course, you're seeing in the United States some dealer groups who are moving into that arena, like Driveway, right? And I'll let Bob talk about that when he comes on, because I know he's got some thoughts on that and some interesting information.
Yeah.
But we are seeing local dealers rise to that challenge. They're getting rid of all of the fluff on their website. We are the number one, blah, 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 blah. Shut up. Who cares? What they're replacing that with is, here's our 3-step process to buying a car.
Yeah.
Simple. Here's what you can expect when you visit our store or call our store. And I know you have a lot of interesting statistics on phone calls and how those go. Well, the point is, we've gone through a period of time where we all, myself included, have all just said really fancy things on our websites. But then and I know, how well do we follow through on the promises we make on our website? What I'm suggesting is, today, the one thing that Carvana has done that I would suggest is, the way they tell you it works on the website, for the most part, I'm not saying they're perfect. In fact, nobody's perfect, but they're at least following through on some of those. Hey, here's what you can expect. The price that you get quoted to you is the price you're going to get for that vehicle. No questions asked. When you come and pick up the car, you're not going to sit here for 5 hours. You're going to be in, we're going to get you to sign some things, and you're going to drive away in your vehicle. We can all do those things as local dealers. We don't need to wait for some big tech company or some other website portal or we can do those things. Mr. Mrs. Customer, when you work with us, you'll enjoy a transparent buying process. You'll enjoy a quick buying process. You'll enjoy, no waiting. We don't like our customers to wait. You can figure those things out today. You don't have to wait.
No, but actually the best retailer in town can be the local store online as well. It doesn't have to be the offline store, which cannot compete online to the big stores. That's actually in as a car dealer the most easiest win you can make.
Right. Because and you can do a lot of it for free.
Yeah.
For example, it's just about, look, when you look at your business operation and you identify the friction points that currently exist, and you just look to address 1 or 2 of them at a time, then you can get creative. Here's what I mean by that. So in Canada, Canada's answer to everything these days is to lock down, right? We've had multiple lockdowns, at least 4 or 5 now, where the country's locked down during the pandemic. Well, previous to pandemic, there were companies out there charging thousands of dollars a month for chat and for video capability.
Yeah.
During the pandemic, guess what? During the pandemic, all of a sudden, when everyone was forced to figure out how to do online appointments, there were dealers that were using Calendly, an online scheduling system, which has a free plan you don't have to pay anything for, and Zoom or Google Meets. And they just simply connected the two. And my point is, when we really are forced to take a look at how to remove friction, we can get creative. And we find that we don't have to spend thousands of dollars often on some of these big shiny tools that everybody wants us to have. And we can actually figure out how to give a better customer experience for free using the tools we already have available to us.
Yeah, if somebody is phoning the dealership and asking about technical questions, optic questions about a used car, and you cannot convert that conversation into a FaceTime conversation where you can actually see the car in real time, not in video afterwards, but in real time, to show the car in real time as in FaceTime video, which every small child will teach you how it works, because that's the way they communicate with their grandfathers, etc. Sometimes you need a pandemic to force you the old way out and the new way in. So Michael, before we are letting Bob in, I want to welcome our viewers like Koen van der Laar, welcome, Patrick Multgen from Germany, hi Michael, and Paul, great to have you here on this wonderful Friday. It's good weather here at the moment. Wilbert Filippo, our partner from Infotrade, Jeroen Boeven van Rhino Events, Martijn Bové, Lauwman Dealergroep, en dan Steven Komen, leuk dat jij er ook bent. Michael, you will stay on the video call, right?
I'm here.
So, onze volgende gast is Bob Lanham. En Bob Lanham is de Head of Automotive Retail bij Meta, oftewel het moederbedrijf van Facebook, Instagram en WhatsApp onder andere. En Bob hebben we al eens een keer eerder gehad op een livestream om te praten over hoe je het beste als dealer natuurlijk uit Facebook kan halen. We zijn in Nederland namelijk niet echt gewend om iemand te kunnen spreken van Facebook. Het zijn altijd wel de agenten of de specialisten die advertenties maken voor Facebook, die ons daar wat over kunnen vertellen. Maar nooit eigenlijk echt iemand van Facebook. Dus daarom is het hartstikke leuk dat Bob hier wel zometeen is. En helemaal vanuit Michigan. Bob, welcome to our event.
It's exciting to be here, and I'm extremely appreciative to be invited. So thank you for having me, and thank you to all of you that took time out of your day to join us. And I really enjoyed the conversation that you and Michael just had.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. But the honor is obviously with us, that you dedicated your time to us to teach us all the possibilities at Facebook, at Meta, I have to say now. But to talk to you, to talk us through your role and your person for our audience, which they don't know you that much, right?
Sure. So again, Bob Lanham, I have the privilege to be the head of automotive retail for now, Meta, formerly Facebook. It's really a US-based role. However, because our markets are still growing in the local space, I have the privilege to do a number of global presentations, whether it's from manufacturers, whether it's working with you, so on and so forth. So I've touched a great amount of markets throughout the world from presentations, whether it was at 3 a.m. or 9 p.m. or luckily 9 a.m. for us here in the States on the East Coast. And it's, my team, myself and my team, we work with dealers, we work with retailers, and we also handle the manufacturer and the money that they may provide dealers, called co-op, that we call it co-op here in the U.S. at least.
Yeah.
Provide dealers to use for marketing. And, our role is just to make sure that, they're performing or executing the best practices on Facebook, because at the end of the day, the last thing we want is any retailer to be wasting their money. Marketing and advertising is a top expense for retailers, right?
Yeah.
So, we want to make sure that the ROI is there, because what you buy and how you buy your advertising and marketing clearly plays a role in your profitability because of the size of the expense.
Yes. Hey, and are you based in Michigan or in New York or in Austin?
Yeah, I heard you say Michigan, so I think you might have said, I believe he's in Michigan. I'm based right outside of Detroit, where where they're now called the Detroit Three, used to be called the Big Three, the Detroit Three, with Stellantis and Ford Motor Company and General Motors. I live in an area that they circle me, so I can get to wherever I need to go quickly.
Okay, so I was once with Brian Pesh at the office in Austin.
Yes, at our Meta office in Austin.
Yes,
great.
Yes, and it was a remarkable office. And what I know from that conversation is that the woman who was walking with us through the office was telling us, this is a good Italian restaurant in-house, this is that, this is the catering, this is, do you want some food, do you want some, whatever the case will be, everything was in the office. I can imagine now what the office now is like. Is there anybody there still?
Well,
or
not
is
every
everybody from home now.
Not every office is open yet. The offices are opening slowly throughout the United States. Our Austin office is open, but you do not have to go. So there's still a time period if you do not feel comfortable going to an office, the workers can still stay home. But we just took over the largest commercial building in Austin, Texas, to complement the two buildings that we already have. So Austin is an important city for us as it relates to Meta.
Yeah, it was an amazing office to visit and have that conversation about automotive and about the opportunities Facebook or Meta has created for the dealers. So, and a question we have here in the Netherlands, for example, we work with a lot of OEMs, right? And we help them with the lead follow-up. So we see all the sources coming in. And one of those sources is, of course, Facebook. And the feeling of the car salesman is that the Facebook lead is not that good because it's too easy to collect that information with the lead forms. You don't have to fill in. And that people thinking they're only liking the article and don't submitting a lead. What is the new strategy or the new products or the new insights you have on that specific topic? Yeah,
listen, I'd be lying to you if I said I'd never have heard that statement before about lead quality. And, that's where you have to test and learn. And I have a number of dealers that said, look, your lead gen ad is perfect for us. We love it because at the end of the day, I might not have sold a car today or within the 30-day period, but I collected information that I can remarket to those people down the road. So Paul, process better than anybody. I love to hear dealers who say, I collected the information that I needed. I might not have sold them a car today, but I'm able to remarket them through our custom audience platform and so on down the road and convert to sale, right? Not everybody's a transactional buyer. They might not be ready to buy within that month. In fact, Google has some great stats that says 75% of people who submit a lead don't submit a lead in the month that they actually end up buying, right? So you have to understand that. That's important to understand. Also,
but also I did the numbers, and then you see if you explain the numbers to the car salesman and you are saying, hey, that's good. Yeah? Your feeling is good. I understand that, blah, blah, blah. But we are doing the numbers now. We are investing in Facebook, for example, 5,000 euros. We are getting 100 leads. Our cost per lead is X. Our cost per appointment is X. Our cost per sale at the end is actually lower than the perceived better quality leads. Yeah. You have more of them, so you need more work to process them. But at the end, the cost per sale is lower because quantity often wins from quality. Because I can work with, I can work better with 100 less quality leads than with 10 better quality leads, right?
Again, it comes down to that process, right? We're seeing a lot of dealerships develop very strong in-house BDCs or business development centers. We're seeing the larger groups centralize their BDC where everything comes into one location. We'll get to messaging, I'm sure, at some point. And you had my good buddy David Kane last year in town, and he just made a post about, are you a messaging first dealer, right? And messaging is something to think about, a precursor to the metaverse, hence the rebrand of our company. So Look, I'm not here to tell you that every single lead that we provide is going to close on a sale. But I'll also challenge the market and say, how are you working that deal, right? Because there are still shoppers in this world, right? What other marketing are you doing on our platform? Are you running brand advertising? Michael talked about, the experience of buying a car has changed, and that has actually become more important than the price. Mm-hmm. It's been proven. I don't think anybody on this cast can deny the fact that people are willing to pay a premium for cars. Right? 89% of vehicles sold here in the U.S. last quarter, so last October, November, December, were sold at MSRP or above.
Yeah, and MSRP is the requested sales price from the manufacturer, right?
You got it. That's exactly what it is. So they're basically paying sticker or more. And old school term is a bump sticker. That's usually tied to the Maroni as the stickers are called. So, for me, and listen, I'll say this, maybe the lead ad through Facebook is not performing for you, whatever you define performance as. So I have a number of dealers say, we don't use the lead ad, but man, you're my number one source at driving leads on my website.
Yeah. So
I use you to drive to my website, and then boom, I capture that lead, and then I take it from there. So I guess here's my bold statement. I know Michael made a controversial statement to set it off. Here's my bold statement to go as well. The reality is that the dealership that develops the best experience, the best process, is going to win at the end. I mean, the sale has changed, right? Consumer expectations have changed, right? As Michael said, and I know you can't access Carvana, I think, in Europe and some of the other online brands, but here's what they did when they entered the market. And I want the dealers on this call to think about when they entered the market. Do you want to know what they did not advertise?
Price.
The car or price. Wasn't in any other ads. You want to know what they advertised?
Availability.
Experience. This is how you're going to buy from us, and it's very different than everybody else. It's online. It's a single platform. You simply go through a flow, and guess what? Our beautiful truck's going to show up 2 days later.
It is like what Michael was saying about the free things, the free steps on the dealer website nowadays to make it comfortable, practical, fast, transparent, etc. And Michael?
Well, and to Bob's point, the thing that comes to my mind is how do you quantify visibility? So, for example, what Bob was talking about, the lead ads, how can I quantify immediately in a one-to-one fashion the value of that lead ad when they're potentially not even going to purchase that vehicle in the same month that they submitted the lead? But here's a very real example of how I think about that. When I first started the Dealer Playbook podcast, Paul, people used to go, how'd you get Gary V on the show? How'd you get Grant Cardone on the show? And this is my version of a Facebook lead ad. On Twitter, I would tweet at Grant Cardone. I would retweet his stuff. I would respond. And any moment he would respond back to me like, I agree, Michael, or thanks for commenting, Mike. I knew that in that moment, he was thinking about me for just a split second, enough time to respond. Yeah. But as that compounded, he started to get familiar with who I was, so that when I asked him to come on the show, i.e. make the buy, he said yes because he was comfortable for me. So when you look at lead ads, when you look at brand advertising, like Bob has said, when you look at TV commercials, newsprint, there is a way to quantify that media mix in the form of the value of me being more visible to you more frequently to you, so that you build that relationship with me, and then I'm the one that's top of mind when you're ready to buy.
And Paul, I'll add to that, because Michael said something that's so important, that the second us retailers understand this, you're gonna win, right? And I want everyone to take themselves back into the in-store process, and a physical human being is walking into the store and up, right? And what that person walking through the door in that first 3 to 5 seconds of the introduction being the most important aspect of the car sale, right? The meet and greet, we call it, right? In fact, when I was selling cars on the showroom floor, I had 9 meet and greet scripts that I had to memorize and rehearse. I got videotaped. Because it was they say the best closers are better openers. Okay. So think about that concept. This is why it's so important for our industry as retailers to market our brand. Market your brand more so than the vehicle. You market price, then you want to negotiate. You want it to be an experience of negotiation. You talk about your experience. You talk about your brand. You talk about the why buy, we call it.
Yeah.
Then that's going to be their first reason of wanting to buy from you. And the car becomes secondary. And we call it a full funnel marketing strategy. Brand, right? To direct response. And direct response means getting a click, getting a lead, getting a message, getting a VDP view, to down remarketing or loyalty, right? And those who understand that and market all 3 tiers, they're going to be the ones that are going to perform well and do well.
But Bob, when you say what you say, the best openers are the best closers.
Yeah, the best closers are better openers. You got it.
Yeah. Then I'm thinking about when I'm getting those Facebook leads, I don't have to perceive that as anything, but have a clear opening and the best opening there is to let them feel welcome, and don't expect anything, because 75% of the leads are turning into sales the other month or 2 months or 3 months from there. So I don't have to be all enthusiastic or nervous about quality, but doing the best opening there is to feel them welcome to the dealership, and then go from there.
This is what I equate. This was if dealers only run lead ads, run no any other advertising, only run advertising where they want to lead. This is how I equate it to. I equate it to my meet and greet opening at my former dealership as this. Hi, welcome to Toyota of Sarasota. My name is Bob Lanham. Can I have your name, number, and email address? And are you buying from me today? You wouldn't do that. No. We don't do that. There's no script across the world that has an introduction to that. But we do that when we only run lead gen ads, where we never brought the meet and greet or the brand advertising to say, hey, buy from me first because I'm an awesome dealership. I have a great experience.
But Bob, what you're saying on the back of the head of the car salesman is that exactly what they think. If you don't buy from me today, then it is the worst lead ever.
Well, this is where the process has to change, right? And listen, I know we tend to live in a 30-day transactional period. I get it. I'm well aware of that. But just because a lead came in and didn't purchase, right, doesn't mean maybe the salesperson didn't do their job, right? Maybe you have a process that says, hey, we're going to give it to the BDC, or we're going to have the BDC hold it before we give it to the sales representative. That's where the in-store process needs to maybe change or get tweaked or be more innovative, because again, not everyone's going to purchase within the next 2 days that they submit a lead. So, David, let's get to David Kane for a quick second, because I know he's a friend of the family to all of us. And, David's a trainer, right? David's a BDC trainer. He goes in store, he works on processes. And one of the things that I've loved to see David evolve as is that non-personal communication, that messaging that is being done where neither people are in the room. And what the data, okay, guys, what the data is showing is that those dealers that can handle messaging appropriately meaning they're not trying to turn it into a lead form that goes into a CRM system that a templated email gets sent out. They handle it like a human being, are having skyrocketing close rates, skyrocketing ROI metrics, to the point, and here's a little bit of another bold statement. Here in the US, there are a number of dealers and a number of groups that are going formless on their website. You can't even fill out a form. You have to either call, text, or message. And their ROI is through the roof. Why? Here's a stat, and then I'll be quiet. 75% of people, and this is a global stat. This is not a US-based stat. This is a stat across. 75% of people want to communicate with a business the same way they communicate with friends and family.
Yeah. So on that topic alone, Michael, I don't know the statistics in Canada, but in America, texting is big, right? And texting is in Europe perceived as old something. That's something your grandfathers are doing it, but normal people are not doing it. You are doing your communication through WhatsApp, for example. I don't know what Canada is doing. But Bob, how is the transition to WhatsApp? If you look at the Chinese market, for example, they are selling and buying everything on their version of WhatsApp. What is Meta or Facebook doing for WhatsApp to make that also easier than it's now?
Great question, and I appreciate it. And there actually is a great comment that we can get to after I answer this question from Wilbert Filippo. Hopefully I presented that correctly, or said that correctly. He's talking about customer lifetime value, which Michael brought up. LTV, we call it, lifetime value. Let's get to that, because again, let's just look at retention rates. Like those that don't handle customers. I'm probably the best example. I do 100% of my services at a car dealership. I own all 3 of my cars, and I've gotten tires, I've gotten brakes. My lifetime value is through the roof. So the second you treat me poorly, I'm gone, right? I'm going to start to test out another dealer. But I'll get to your question about WhatsApp. And what's nice about our communication products, WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, Instagram Direct, is that they all have APIs connected to them so that they can be pulled into third-party platforms for third parties to create a centralized messaging system or so on. Now, WhatsApp is not as popular here in the States as, say, Messenger is, Facebook Messenger, but it's getting there. It's my third column of my, here are the numbers. And every time I update the numbers, I'm like, holy cow, it is going to surpass probably Facebook Messenger here in the next few years. And here's another thing. Look at Instagram potentially surpassing Facebook in the next few years, at least here in the US. So we have a lot of business tools tied to these platforms so that they can be pulled into third-party platforms, or we do have what's called Business Suite, okay? Yeah. That is a centralized inbox. That is a centralized area for you to make posts on your LinkedIn and your Facebook pages. So we have a couple case studies in Brazil and Latin America where WhatsApp is essentially the main communication platform of connecting with connecting and closing car deals with consumers. So this is what I would say. If you're a dealer listening, if you're an agency listening that works with dealers, if you have not discussed a messaging strategy or understanding what a messaging strategy is, I think you said you're going to have Brian Pash on here tomorrow, or I know you've had him in the past. He's got a great cartoon. He's got a great cartoon that basically says it's mimicking someone walking into the showroom floor and the sales representative saying, "Can I have your name, number?" Someone's going to get back to you in the next 24 to 48 hours, right? Like you would never do that. The other thing I want dealers to think about, and listen, I got to be agnostic here, so test and learn, which is, do I handle it in-house or do I outsource it, right? And you have to test and learn, but I guess I'll just say this. Do you outsource your brand? Like,
No.
does Paul DeBreeze outsource his brand to me for me to try to make who you are? You don't. You're your brand. Michael's his brand. I'm my brand. So just think about that concept when someone engages with a business, what their expectations are when they engage with that business.
With the person in the business instead of somebody outsourced. So
Paul,
Michael,
real quick, just think about this. If the goal, if you have a strategy that takes a message that comes from here, and the goal is to turn it into a CRM input to then email, that is absolutely counterintuitive to human behavior. It's the dumbest concept of all time.
no, the email is actually a traditional digital medium, which is, I challenge every salespeople always with the same question: how many times do you actually see your personal email box? You can send a card with a postal. It's better and faster to read than an email. How's that working in Canada, Michael?
Well, for me, it comes back down to what we've been talking about essentially, which is eliminating the friction from how customers want to interact with your store. And to Bob's statement, those that can figure out the customer experience and a process to match are the ones that are going to win. Mm-hmm. We don't need to be afraid of the large tech incumbents that are entering the market as competitors, or maybe even some of the OEMs that are coming out with products that are perceived competition, because we have the ability right at the ground floor to provide the experience that customers want. So as far as lead forms go, yeah, I think they're becoming much more antiquated, and we're looking at, constantly coming up with ways that we can just connect consumer to buyer or to dealership as efficiently as possible, whether that's through WhatsApp, whether that's through text messaging. I don't know that, to Bob's point, the mass adoption of WhatsApp in Canada, not quite there, but it's steadily growing. And I think the more that the world becomes connected, the more the adoption will happen. For example, I would have never used WhatsApp unless I had colleagues in Europe. Like, I never would have even signed up for it. But because I know I have colleagues in Europe, such as yourself, and all throughout Europe, I'm brought onto that app, and then I start to adopt my ways to use it because I know that that's how they want to communicate. It was similar to years ago. I remember you said to me, Paul, I said, "Are you active on Facebook?" And what did you say? You said LinkedIn is where you said something to the effect of LinkedIn is where, and this was before even in North America, we even were caring enough about LinkedIn.
No, but Facebook is perceived as something for your private life, right? To share with your actually friends, not your 5,000 friends, but your actually 15 friends.
The people you actually know, yeah.
In your family. And LinkedIn is very, very business wise. And you can see if I cannot do the same message on Facebook and on LinkedIn because it makes no sense whatsoever. I'm getting no engagement whatsoever on Facebook if I'm going to sell something. I'm getting a lot of engagement if I'm sharing content on LinkedIn. I'm not getting engagement also there if I want to sell something either.
Right. There's an interesting thing, though. About a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, I spoke at a youth convention to teenagers. And I made a comment about Facebook, and you know what they said? We are all on Instagram. Our moms are on Facebook. And you know what I thought was really interesting about that? Because it had nothing to do with the auto industry. This was a youth camp, for crying out loud. But my brain immediately said, well, doesn't that make sense then for where car sales professionals should be trying to build relationships? Where the buyer is. Now, that may not be yours and my buyer. No. But to your point, on a personal level, I think there's a tremendous value to being where your customers are, kind of to the point about WhatsApp and messaging and all of those sorts of things. If my ideal audience is actually on Facebook, hanging out, watching videos, surfing marketplace, they're accustomed to Messenger, then it's incumbent upon me to get out of their way and adapt to the way that they want to communicate. If they're familiar, so for example, everybody knows how to use Google at this point, and then consumer comes over to the dealer website and they're forced into a new learning experience where they have to figure out how to navigate inventory in a different way. Maybe it's a little archaic, maybe it's a little too advanced. Yeah. When we could have just simply said, well, they already know how they got here from Google. And so if they know how to use that, why don't we give them a Google-like experience on the website so that they already know how to find what they're looking for? It's a very simple thing, but it's all to the point suggesting that if they want to use WhatsApp, make yourself available on WhatsApp. If they want to use Messenger, make yourself available on Messenger. If they're using Google, make your experience on your website as Google-esque as you possibly can. And then to Bob's point, pull in the tools that you need to utilize to make your experience as seamless as possible. And those are the dealerships that are going to win.
Bob, last thoughts, because I know you're giving us a lot of time.
Here's my last thoughts. Web 3 or Web 3.0, as we're calling it, is being pegged as the metaverse, right? The metaverse is Web 3 or Web 3.0. And listen, we've got a ways away before we get to, full adoption of what the metaverse, and we don't even really know what it's going to look like for automotive retail. But I'll tell you, this is the time to start to think about what it should look like for automotive retail, not necessarily what maybe a partner wants it to look like for them first, you second. And I'll say this, and I made this joke on another meeting I had, and we just finished talking about messaging. You heard me say earlier, messaging is a precursor to the metaverse. What did I mean by that, right? Well, messaging, you communicate with someone that is not physically near you, right? They're in their own house, they're in their own state, they may be in their own country, like they're not near you. So you have to learn those skills to virtually communicate and sell. Well, that's what the metaverse is going to be. The metaverse is 100% virtual. So I don't think we're going to have a sales process in the metaverse where I join and I communicate with a robot that says, "Hey, Bob, thank you. Thanks for walking into my virtual dealership. Can I have your name, number, email address?" And then I'm going to email you outside of the metaverse. Like, I don't even know if email will even be around, right? Like, when does email die? Because I spend every morning probably deleting, just swiping 100+ emails that I barely read the headline. So I guess my point is, start to prepare now for what the experience is going to look like tomorrow. And frankly, I think we're still a little behind, right? If we still believe that a lead is going to close in the next 2 days and we call it garbage, and we're not focused on working that lead, and what Wilbert said earlier about lifetime value. And listen, I have the highest lifetime value from the one store that I've bought 7 cars from. I'm not a price shopper. No. Right? I'm willing to pay an extra $50 a month, an extra couple $1,000 if you just leave all the other antics out of it. And there's a whole population or a whole generation called millennials who feel the exact same way. They don't want to deal with it. They will pay extra if you just treat them right and you work them right and you do it the way they want it to be done.
Yes.
We just have to get there. And that's why we have these, and I'm appreciative of your conference, because we need to continue to tell a story and push the market to get there. So thank you for having me. I'm here. I can still stay on if you need me to for a little bit.
No, Bob, I have one question from Patrick from Germany. Are there plans to bring the vehicle catalog from Meta to Instagram and WhatsApp as well?
Yeah, great question, Patrick. And we're working on a number of things regarding automotive products in general. And I actually had a call yesterday regarding the importance of inventory syndication, which is essentially what you're referring to, which is how do I syndicate my inventory, to the broadest market that I possibly can. So can't tell you much now. There's more to come. There's things that are being worked on, but this is what I would say. While it's not an automotive product right now, so full disclosure, it's purely an e-commerce product.
Yeah.
But utilize or test out our shops product, which is global. And again, you have to adapt an automotive catalog to an e-commerce catalog. So it might not have all the bells and whistles, but if you do treat it, you're going to see some interesting results. You get great insights of having a shop on your Facebook page and Instagram. There's some great organic delivery. So again, start to test out some of the products that we have, even though they might not necessarily be specific to hack our products and tell me what you need.
Okay, we'll do that. Thank you, Bob, for your time and for your content. And I will see you next time here in the online event. And maybe if you are at the NADA, then we have to catch up.
I'm working on getting the NADA. I need super approval to travel, but trust me, I'm fighting for it. Appreciate you all. You guys all have a great rest of the day.
Thank you, Bob.
See you, Michael.
See you, Bob.
Bye-bye. So, Michael, are you going to the NADA as well?
It's in the plans. I have to get super approval
from your wife.
Yeah, that's right. From my wife. No, I am planning on being there. Are you going to be there?
Pardon me?
Are you allowed to leave Europe?
It is still orange. The country, they have the travel advice. They make it in colors, and red is just not good, and orange, it is a negative advice, but that's still an advice, right? So I'm going.
Very good. Very good.
Definitely.
Well, hopefully we'll be able to connect there. I want to draw attention to something that I think is so important. We talk a lot about the customer experience, Paul, but you know what worries me? What worries me is that in general, en masse, most dealers, and don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to be Michael versus dealers, because I feel like, as a business owner, I fall into the same category. We are constantly too occupied looking for the next shiny object to solve our problem.
The shiny bullet.
The shiny bullet, when the shiny bullet is us. And the challenge that I have, speaking of NADA, the worry that I have is we're going to show up to NADA and what's going to happen. They're going to have all the booths and look at this new tool that we developed and look at this new thing, and everybody's going to get all excited. And then a year from now, we're all going to forget about it. Why? Yeah. It's because if you and I have learned anything over the last 2 decades or more, it's that we have continued to put our faith into the wrong thing when we should have been putting more faith into ourselves. And so I know there are dealers out there who are probably getting frustrated with the customer experience conversation and the culture, the internal culture of my store conversation. But for those that are willing to listen, I plea with you to hear that those are the companies, not just automotive, any company. Those are the ones that are going to transform and rise above and accelerate beyond anybody else, especially in the next 3, 5, and 7 years. And this is why we're talking so much about it. This is why 7 years ago, I spoke so much about it. And 7 years before that, I spoke so much about it, because when you really consider, I don't know if I've shown you this graphic, but follow me for a minute. Imagine a cartoon where there's a little fish, a little orange fish being eaten by a slightly larger red fish, being eaten by a slightly larger blue fish.
Yeah.
And then there's the largest yellow fish. And you know what he's saying? Man, I really don't like orange fish all that much. And the point is, if you can picture that in your mind, the point is to suggest this. The bigger fish that we're worried about, the online buying experience, digital retailing tools, whatever, those aren't the big fish that we should be concerned about. The big fish has always been and will always be the customer.
Yeah. And that's the big fish.
And I know that's the big yellow fish.
Yeah. Orange.
That's the small orange fish, and then the big. And if we're not careful, and if we brush this away and we say, nah, but it's so hard and we don't this and I don't know what to do and things work differently where I am. No. Are there customers where you are? Yes. Then you had better take a hard look in the mirror, utilize the tools at your disposal right now, map them to a better customer experience, and just finally be willing to put in the work. My worry is, I had a conversation, Paul, yesterday actually with Dan Moore. You know Dan.
Yeah.
You know what he said to me? From VistaDash. You know what he said? He said the scariest metric that I can see in VistaDash is the number of dealers who are overcompensating for doing the work with big inflated ad spend. In other words, they're spending way too much on trying to acquire leads and trying to buy new tools and trying to do all the different shiny bullet things, but they're just overcompensating for what we all know needs to actually happen. And that is to put in the work. When you and I first met, you remember I looked like Danny DeVito. I looked like Danny DeVito if he was a turtle. And then at some point, I had to stop complaining about how I looked like Danny DeVito or Jabba the Hutt. I had to stop complaining about it. I had to stop looking for the shiny bullet tool to help me. And what really needed to happen is I just needed to put in the work and start eating properly and start exercising, because nothing will compensate for putting in the work.
Thank you for that one, Michael. And on that note, I want to thank you for your time, because we're already in this for, I think, 1.5 hours to work at it. I have also in the green room Wilbert Filippo, one of the guys who commented a lot about our conversation, the conversation with Bob. So I will put him in as well. And Wilbert.
Hi, Paul. Hi, Michael.
Hello, how are you?
Hi, good to see you. Thank you for your insights, Michael.
And I thought that the David Spisak also is in the green room, so we are going to invite him as well in 5 minutes. So David, thank you for being here. Wilbert, and when Michael is still on, we are doing conversation in English then.
Sure.
What did you think about the conversation we had with Michael and with Bob?
I keep thinking, I wish we were that far with our dealers here in Holland in this way of thinking. But that's what you and I are doing, Paul, trying to just evangelize and it's just also what Michael says, it's not just looking at your lead and your lead cost. It's about doing the work, having your customers satisfied, having the retention, and then if you work that out, you will have a customer lifetime value. And if you work that out in your CRM system, you will see that, and you will, if you know what the sources have been for acquiring a new customer, and if you know that you can have a long customer lifetime value, well, then you can have higher CPAs, you can advertise more, you can get more clients, and then you have a sustainable growth. But it's not just in the advertising, and it's not just in the quality of the leads. It's the whole chain of your business that you have to work on very hard. That's what it is.
Yeah, I can imagine that one.
Yeah, but here in Holland, if you look at our customers with the CRMs, and it's getting better, and they're getting better systems as well. But it's still the way they spend budgets, the way they look at budgets, the involvement often of the management into marketing and lead generation is quite limited, and it's such an important part of your whole business. And well, I just hope that more people hear discussions like this, and on a higher level, and be aware that you can't just do the business like you did 15 years ago in a showroom. You have to do your business both online and in your showroom and in your workshop.
Yeah. You bring up a very good point that I'd like to just draw on, which is, as human beings, we are kind of absolute creatures. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Oh, I have a sore throat. It must be COVID. No, maybe it's just allergies. And what I mean by that is, so then we go to NADA, or we hop on a conference like this, and I'm sure there are some that are thinking, but that doesn't work that way here, kind of to the way you said it. I wish it would work that way here. And I'm sure there's dealers in Holland and across Europe that are saying, here's these Americans again, and they're telling us the way it is. My request then is, take what you've heard and then apply it to the context of your circumstances where you are. Because there's always something that can be done where you are. If it's not exactly that way, did you hear anything to then look at your business? And that's really the important thing. I'm glad actually that Europe doesn't work the same way as the United States, and it doesn't work the same way as Australia or Canada or whatever. Because, you heard Bob talking about Web 3.0 and the metaverse. I'm glad that he added that one little piece about we're not there yet, and it's going to take some time, because
we don't yet know how it's going to look like.
We don't know how. Look at what we thought Web 2.0 was going to be. It did not end up the same way we thought it was going to be when it started.
Not at all.
And so it's the same thing with this. My fear is that too many dealers around the world, and too many businesses for that matter, myself included, is that sometimes we get comfortable then saying, I don't need to worry about this now because that's not the way it is where I am. What my message really is, and what I appreciate that you brought up, is that, okay, then look at how it actually is where you are. Make sure you have an understanding of how it actually is where you are, and then do something.
Yeah. Instead of looking back how it was. And like it always worked.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
On that note, Wilbert, thank you for your cooperation, of course, for our partnership as well. Michael, thank you again for your time. And now I'm going to go to our last guest, and that is David Spisak. And David, it's the first time I'm going to interact with David live, because we have some interactions through LinkedIn. And of course, I know him. I heard him on Clubhouse. I heard him in several other meetings as well. So I'm very proud that he's here. David, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's good to be with you, Paul, Michael. I'm sorry, Danny, DeVito, how are you?
Hey. Paul, all I can say is you're in for a treat with David. He's one of the most tremendous people that I've had the pleasure of meeting in the last year.
Thank you,
I'm
Michael.
looking forward. Hey, David, nice to meet you in person by a video. And can you explain in short who you are for our Dutch audience and what you did in the automotive space?
Sure. And thank you for having me, Paul. It's a pleasure to be with you. Michael, it's always a pleasure to be with you as well. So I am David Spisak, and bottom line, I'm a car guy. I love the car business. In last November, I celebrated my 40th year in retail automotive. For those that don't know me, I spent over 25 years in the retail dealership space. I'm a former dealer myself, and I reinvented myself, so to speak, in January of 2008. I thought January of 2008, late 2007 would be the perfect timing to go out and start my first software company. I didn't know anything. I didn't know how to code software. I didn't know how to build software. I didn't know anything more than the fact that I lived smack close in the middle of Silicon Valley. But I thought, what a fantastic time to start a software company. I wanted to solve for X. I wanted to solve for an issue that I saw as being a major issue. And that was dealers could not get data, the right insights out of their data management systems. Most of the systems dealers use, even today, Paul, compared to technology we see on our phone and that we see everywhere else in our life, what's in the data management systems is like a 1965 Mercedes competing with a 2022 AMG. It's just, there's no comparison, and you can't get the data out very easily. And there's a lot of limitations, and that caused issues. It caused dealers and their management teams to not have the critical insights they needed. Well, I started working on data, or what people refer to big data, more than a decade before anybody else started talking about it. And what I learned in my dealership is that I could leverage that data that's out of the DMS in a different way. It becomes significantly more powerful. And the way that played out, Paul, in my store is we were making an average. Think about this. Over a 5-year period of time, we were making an average of about $1.3 million per year in net profit. Okay. And that put us in the United States, that put us a little bit above average. Okay. Now, by leveraging data in a different way, I was able to, with the help of my team, the management team, which was tremendously talented, we were able to go from 1.3 million to $25 million in net profit. A year. Okay. So we went from making $1 million a year to $2 million every month. Okay. So all of a sudden we went from being like everybody else to completely separating from everybody else. We didn't just do that one time. We did it over a continued period of time. And so what it taught me was that by applying significantly new, different management philosophies and principles, combining that with a different philosophy on marketing and leveraging data in a whole new way, I could transform any dealership's profitability. And I proved that out in a couple of ways. First and foremost, what I did is when I became an executive for AutoNation, we sold our store back in 1999, and year 1999, and in January 2000, AutoNation asked me to become an executive and to run a $2.5 billion unit of the company in a certain geography. We had so many underperforming stores. There was 10 regions at the time, and this was by far the worst performing. In less than 18 months, became the number one performing market in the United States for AutoNation. We saw stores that were losing money hopelessly every month, all of a sudden make money. And this wasn't because of a chip shortage. This wasn't because of a pandemic that allowed the supply chain to positively impact growth. This was the old hard way where you actually had to sell cars, make money. And so we took stores from losing money to making money. We took stores that were making this and took them up here, and it significantly changed the outcome. So that told me something. And when the cloud came along, I decided with my partner, Frank, let's go out and start a software company. Little did we know 2008 would become the biggest recession in the history of the United States. But it's okay. It turned out fine. We built that software. I sold it to Reynolds & Reynolds about 6 years later. And I've built multiple software since then. And I consult for technology companies today, technology companies that want to work with American dealers, sell to American dealers. So I consult for them, and I also consult for dealers across the country.
But David, if you are saying that, like the AutoNation example you mentioned, I can imagine that you have a store which losing money, and that can happen, that you implement big data, but only implementing big data without a cultural shift is not making a profit at all, right?
Sure. And it's important you bring that up. It's important you bring that up, Paul, because Michael was talking about something a little while ago. He was referring to the silver bullets. We're about to go to NADA, and you watch the dealers go up and down the carpet. I want you to really pay attention. Any dealers that are going, I want you to pay attention to where all the dealers are. They're in the silver bullet booths, right? And they think they could buy something, just add water, and their profit's going to explode. And it doesn't work that way, right? So you said something very important, change management. So you noticed that when I was referring to my example, the initially at the store, it wasn't just the data. I had to have the right team. I had to have the right insights. And then I still had to change the management philosophy, right? Our philosophy on sales, our philosophy on training, our philosophy on marketing. And combining those, Paul, is what exploded the net profit by 25 times. By the way, we were more profitable. The second place net profit store in the United States, 21,000 dealers. We were number one. Second place was $10 million less than us.
Less.
So
And
we
it's
didn't
only
just
one
beat
store
them.
or
Right.
5 stores, or was it only one store?
One store on a small lot, 4 acres. I could only fit 25 new cars on my lot. Think about that. 25 new cars.
Incredible.
So Michael said something else important. He says, hey, no matter where you are, you might be sitting here and going, man, crazy Americans. It's different here. You don't know what it's like in the Netherlands. You don't know what it's like in Spain. You don't know what it's like in Germany. Well, first of all, I do a little bit because I spent a fair amount of time in Germany because I had both BMW and Mercedes stores and Volvo as well. So I do know a little bit, but I can tell you this. I've learned this. Anybody that's saying, yeah, that's different. Yeah, but hard to believe. Start chasing what you don't believe and you'll make more money than you've ever made. I promise you that. If you chase only what you believe, you're not going to make any more money.
Yeah. Start chasing what you don't believe.
Start chasing what you don't believe if you want to explode your net profit. If you want to blow away your clients, clients all over the world are the same, right?
Yes.
The expectations are coming up here. They are learning from this device that they want things faster, simpler, easier. And so the way that we used to do things doesn't work anymore. And we have to change our philosophy of how we work with clients. We have to become obsessed. Jeff Bezos is obsessed with his clients. Elon Musk is obsessed with his clients. They're not obsessed with the money. They're obsessed with the client experience. Apple is obsessed with the client experience. They've gone from a 300 billion. They've gone, think about this. They were worth 300 billion when Steve Jobs passed away. They're worth $3 trillion today under Tim Cook, obsessed with the client experience. So those are a lot of the things that I work with dealers on is change management, change your culture. For example, if you are a dealer that is starting to embrace digital retailing, and I hope you are, if you embrace it today, you're about 3 years late, but it's not too late because you could still pass so many dealers that are not understanding what clients want. But I want you to think about something. Any client, including ourselves, when we go onto a digital retailing experience, it's a one price experience. It's a single point of contact experience. And so what's happening is we create a digital retailing experience that gives people the feeling that they've got shared control. Clients want shared control. They get the feeling it's going to save them time. Clients want you to save them time. But then at some point, they have to go offline. They walk into your store and it's 1985 again, like Austin Powers. All of a sudden, what happened? I was doing this beautiful process. It was easy. It was fast. It was simple. It was transparent. And all of a sudden I walk in and this person from 1985 or 1995 is taking me through things the way they've done it for the last 30 years. That's worlds colliding. That doesn't work. That's two different cultures. So if somebody's going to become phenomenal in digital retailing, they need to make sure that the approach with a client, the process with a client, and the experience for the client are identical offline and offline, Paul. When you buy something from Apple in the store or you buy something from Apple online, it's the same process.
Yeah. There's no friction. There's no friction whatsoever. Hey, David, what is your thoughts? Because Mike and I touched upon in our first conversation about selling EVs. Because if you see here in Europe, selling EVs is very big. There's a lot of market share. If you see the numbers in I thought it was September, that the Tesla was the number one car sold that month in whole of Europe, for example. So EV is kind of a big thing here, but the OEMs are selling the vehicles without any profits to the dealers. So the dealers have no profit whatsoever for the EV. It's like the horse of Troya and coming in, and the OEMs are saying, hey, it's a different kind of model, different kind of car. You have to make your money somewhere else because there's no margin whatsoever on an EV. So they are trying to make money on the solar panels, on the supercharger, on the company supplying the electric. They make some adjustments, whatever. How do you see that market evolved in America?
Well, it's a little bit similar, and we may be a little bit behind Europe in this regard in terms of adoption of EVs. You see, in the United States, the prevailing feeling by dealers is that clients are not demanding EVs. The clients are not the ones pushing EVs. The government is pushing EVs.
It is.
So, and it's true. California, biggest car market in the country, stated that they are outlawing. You cannot sell a brand new gas engine vehicle after the year 2034. 2035 and later, only EVs. That's not customers demanding that. Clients still have a very significant amount of range anxiety in the United States, and I'd be willing to bet that exists in Europe as well. In the United States, we have one charger for every 20 people, every 20 EVs. Of the chargers that are in public places, in almost every case, according to research, at least one of those chargers is non-functioning. So imagine you pull up to a charger, it doesn't function. The third thing is that in most cases, those chargers are not superchargers. Superchargers is a small percentage of all chargers. The majority, you have to park there, and I hope you're hungry because you're going to have lunch for 8 hours while your car charges. Okay, it's not good. And then what you're talking about, they're trying to change the outcome. So here's something that's interesting. Yeah. We have franchise laws in the United States that disallows the manufacturer from competing with a dealer. So the manufacturer has never been allowed to sell cars directly to the consumers. EVs are changing that. They've learned from Tesla. As much as they hated Tesla, they didn't want Tesla. They love what Tesla has done because it's taught them it is possible to go direct to consumer. And what they've done is Tesla has also opened the door from a legal perspective where Tesla has been allowed in almost every state across the country to sell directly to consumers. So watch what happens. Ford comes out with the new Bronco, right? Do they go the traditional path? And this is not an EV. This is a gas car, Paul. But you could only order it directly from Ford. You had to put your deposit with Ford. And then Ford, based on the deposits and the geography, they said, here, Paul, Mr. Dealer, here, you're going to deliver that car to you. You're going to make this much money instead of this much money. You're going to make this much money, and that's all you get. So, you know, there's a concern that we're going down a path where manufacturers are going to take advantage of the opportunity that EVs present, or even subscriptions with EVs present, that will allow them to circumvent the franchise law. Secondly, it will relegate dealers with those cars into becoming essentially a fleet management operation. Yeah. The customer buys the car from the manufacturer, and the customer takes delivery at the dealer, and the dealer, to your point, makes very little, if any, money. So it's like when you see big work trucks, you know, that are sold by dealerships, they make no money on those. They make this much money on those trucks, and then they could sell a normal truck and make this much money. So there is a concern there. Dealers also, you've got to watch the money, everybody. Your manufacturers, where are they investing their money right now? Are they investing it in dealership related infrastructure? Are they investing in combustible engine infrastructure or technology? No, they're investing their money largely in the connected car, right? Autonomous. Can you imagine? You've got manufacturers investing in autonomous EVs. So that's where the money's going if you follow the money. And so it's a concern. Now, here's some good news. So the concern and the fear was that our fixed operations departments in your dealership were going to get demolished, right? Because there's no more. What is the two biggest things your customers come in for the dealers in there? They come in for oil changes and brakes.
Right. Yeah, and
okay?
tires.
And so there's no oil in an EV. There's no oil changes, right?
No.
That's gone. And brakes last 100,000 miles. 100,000 miles.
But David, the latest figures in Holland, where we have a lot of EVs, where a lot of superchargers, we have on every EV 4 superchargers instead of the other way around, right?
Brilliant.
If you see the figures from the maintenance of EVs, you don't need the oil, yes, but you need more brakes and you need more tires because they are driving faster, pull up faster, brake harder, etc. So what they thought it would be with less maintenance is actually more maintenance, not carried by the independents, but only by the dealers because they understand their brand.
That's what the good news was I was going to share is the fear is our service departments are going to go like this. Now in the US, we don't have those same results. In the US, yes, the tire consumption is up, but we don't see that in the brakes. But in fairness, we have a fraction of the EVs that you do as a percentage of the population. But here's one thing I can tell you. If any dealers out there, regardless of manufacturer, if you're worried about service, I just want you to drive over to your closest Tesla service department. And I want you to take a good look because they can't even get another car into the service department. They've got so many cars, they can't even move cars. They're all broken. They break with a greater regularity. We've gotten to the point that the amount of technology in these cars, on one hand, it's brilliant, right? If something goes wrong with the tech in my phone, I might not be able to use an app. It might slow down performance, but I won't be stuck on the side of the road. My wife's Tesla X, she has a Tesla X. Her screens went out, and the car decided it doesn't want to move out of park. Just doesn't feel like it, right? And so we tried everything. Here's a good one. Guys, they couldn't tow the car because they couldn't get it in from park into neutral. So the Tesla has to send a technician. Now, here's the best part. Do you know what the problem was, Michael, on her car? Do you know the SD card that you put in a camera? The SD card had become corrupt, and it stopped her from driving the car. So these things break. And you are going to find, listen, they still need detailing. They still need tires. They still need repairs. They're still going to get crashed. People are still going to crash their cars. So
they still need SD cards.
They still need SD cards. You just have to find a way to reinvent yourself when it comes to the service side. But in America, and I don't know how it is over there, but in America, they are taking advantage of the EVs to change the language of your dealer agreement. That's the biggest challenge. This is the biggest concern. And so as they change the dealer agreement, which they couldn't have done 10 years ago, you know why? Because their electric vehicles were terrible. Nobody wanted. If you told me, hey, if you don't sign this, you don't get this Honda Insight, I would say, where do I sign? I don't want the Honda Insight. Right. But now they're making cars that matter. They're making cars that consumers want. And so they're leveraging that as a means to get dealers to sign new dealer agreements. You got to make sure you understand This is just another example that's happened over decades that we must reinvent as an industry. We must reinvent as a dealership, because the truth is, any dealer out there in the Netherlands, I promise you could double your net profit this year. I promise you. I've done it, and I've done it, and I've done it, and I've done it. Anybody can double their net profit. There's so much opportunity out there that even if we do have this shift as a result of EVs, we could still have an incredibly profitable dealership. And over here in the United States, by the time we get to 2030, we are still going to be in single-digit percentage in terms of EVs versus the total population of cars driving on roads in America. Yeah. I don't know what that's like over there. Sounds like it's going to be faster.
No, it is still, if the market is changing now, the oldest cars are in 10 years old, ten years old, but still we have 5 million diesel cars, gasoline cars still on the road. So there's plenty of opportunity as well. And if you are what we speak about to try to meet up here in the Netherlands, I'm going to show you some sophisticated dealers and some dealers lagging behind, and there you can see the opportunity to present itself, and you see the waste actually of opportunities.
Yeah, and I would love to do that. I hope to do that someday. When I say that you could double your profit, I'm talking about the sophisticated dealers. The non-sophisticated dealers should be 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 times, right? Yeah. The sophisticated dealer can double your profit this year immediately, but we have to change. And one of the biggest keys is, number one, is we have got to master the client experience, and we've got to be able to exceed that the expectations, whether it's in service, whether it's in parts, or whether it's in sales, right? The second thing that we need to do is you've got to leverage every dealership. If you look at all of your client base, okay, you may have this many clients that on a net promoter score would be a 0. They're ambivalent. They don't hate their dealership. They don't love their dealership. It's just, that's the dealership I use. Yeah. But every dealership has got a percentage of your client base, Paul, that is a rabid fan, that is a champion of your store, that is an advocate, and very, very few dealers are leveraging that fact. Very few dealers are really taking the time to understand who those people are, define who those people are, and continue to nurture the relationship so that those people in turn will go out as advocates, as champions of your dealership, and assist you in being able to market your store for no money. Right? So that's a huge opportunity. Digital retailing is a huge opportunity. Used cars is still a huge opportunity. Service and collision is a huge opportunity. But we must think differently as we move forward. Every company that's a top performing company in the world that we admire, every single one of them, they constantly reinvent. And they're constantly trying to look for ways to beat how they do things before their competitor figures out how to beat what they're doing. And that's key. Every dealership should have its own internal R&D department, its own internal lab where you test new approaches, new ways of doing things, new ways of engaging with clients so that you can stay far ahead of everybody else in the market. Because, Paul, it doesn't matter what happens outside of the walls of your dealership. It matters what happens inside the walls. And if your dealership, if the market gets smaller because of the economy, if the market changes because of the manufacturer, listen, I only have to beat my competitors. And I can still get what I want. I have to do it by dominating you and rendering my competitors irrelevant to the customer. And so that's one of the things I really try to work on with clients here in the United States.
I can understand that completely. Hey, David, I have one question left. Michael, do you have a question for David?
I have lots of questions for David. As you can tell, he's a deep well of knowledge when it comes to this industry. David, I've been seeing this question pop up, and so I want to ask it of you.
Yes.
From Wit Norad, she's asking about overcoming the roadblocks to accessing data, so that the buying experience, the online experience, the customer experience can be more streamlined. How did you do that when there's so many? You had mentioned the DMS. You've mentioned, obviously there's DMS data, there's inventory data, there's customer CRM data. What was your process to kind of get your hands on all of that data in a streamlined way so that you could analyze?
Thank you, Michael. And Whit, that's actually a fantastic question. The challenge, as you know, Whit, is that unlike the rest of the world, which is utilizing an open API approach or open API environment, the traditional data management systems have always operated on a closed API, right? So back in the day when I started Reverse Risk, the data company, we had to go in through hostile methods, meaning the DMS companies did not want us to be able to get their data. We just figured out a way to do it through hostile means. In other words, directly through our clients. So a lot of you are probably familiar with the term data warehouse, right? Or you'll hear the term middleware. So normally in software, the way you infrastructure a product is it's built on a database, right? A single code database. And you take data into that database, let's say for Reynolds and Reynolds DMS, and that data all lives in there. And then you have a different area for the CDK data, different area for another DMS company, whatever it might be. So the challenge has always been a couple things. Number one, dealers don't have control of their own data. That's obviously the challenge. But what you're going to start to see, I promise you, and I'm going to do what I can to help the process, is dealers are going to start, first of all, demanding more, just like customers. They're going to start demanding more in terms of access and control of their data. The second thing is you're starting to see larger groups of dealerships and moving in a direction where they're taking on the cost of building their own data warehouse. And they're saying to the data management system company, if you don't give me access, first of all, I'm not breaking the terms of the contract by pulling my own data for my own purposes. So DMS companies have had to start to relent. Well, the reality is even a small dealer out there are multiple ways that you can start to extract your data and build and leverage a data warehouse. And you don't even have to build the data warehouse. There's companies out there that you can move that data securely into your own data warehouse. And here's the best news. Once I do that, I could then pull data from a second data source, a third data source, a fourth data source. And now I can combine that data to get to get insights that are simply not possible in a current DMS environment. So if you want to reach out to me on LinkedIn, I would be happy to expand on that further, but I'm being sensitive to time because I see it's about 10 till the top of the hour. And I don't want Paul to kick me off the stage.
No, David, I will not. I will never. But thank you for your time, David. And it was a cool and for sure. And I trying to get the right English words in my head because I know the Dutch word now. But it was for me very meaningful and. What we said at first, connecting with Michael, connecting with Brian Pesh, with Brian Benster, with Kevin Fry, with you, with David Kane, etc. It made me so much better to see the bigger picture, that it helps me a lot to help the dealers here in Holland so I can help them. So I'm really grateful for your time and your patience as well. And Michael, of
for having
course, it was my pleasure. Absolutely my pleasure. Michael, thank you for staying with me here for the last 2.5 hours. It was very pleasant to be. And David, are you at the NEDA as well?
I will be at NADA. I just agreed to become an advisor. Like I said, I work with a number of number one companies. So in other words, I work with the we have one client's the number one social media agency in the planet for automotive. They're called Constellation. The number one marketing agency is Team Velocity. The number one a lot of different number one companies in the country. And I just agreed to become an advisor for Techion, which is the biggest disruptor in the DMS space. So I'll be there doing some things with Techion. I'll be doing some things for my own consulting firm and for some of my dealer clients and other technology clients. So I look forward, if anybody's out there, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Let's connect. And perhaps we could meet in person in Las Vegas. And Paul, I look forward to seeing you in Las Vegas.
Yes, I will be definitely, if the government is allowing me to enter, then I definitely are being at the NEDA in Las Vegas in March. Then we have a cup of coffee or something and to have this conversation further. So thank you. Have a great Friday.
Thank you, you as well.
And I see you in March.
I look forward to it. Michael, always a pleasure.
You too, sir. Appreciate
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye. So, Michael, the end of 2.5 hours.
Hey, I take pages of notes. You know, what's the saying? Never the master, always the student.
Yes, and I write something also, your father's lesson.
That's right.
And the best closers are the best openers. And and Google thinks that their leads are shit through Facebook.
Right.
Only 75% will do something. So it was a fun Friday evening almost.
Well, I let me just say this. You know, you've given me a lot of praise, but I have to tell you how much I appreciate what you're doing and what you're doing for Holland and for other parts of Europe, because you're bringing these conversations to the industry that I know you love and I know that I love. Yeah. This industry has blessed our lives in more ways than we can imagine, and it's given us so many tremendous opportunities. And so I want to give a very special acknowledgement to the dealers who continue to show up, who are coming to your workshops, who will be there with you in March, who are listening to Brian, who take the time to listen to all of us, to David, to Bob, to David Spisak, you know, to David Kane, to yourself and your partners, because, you know, it takes a lot of effort to bring this kind of content, as you know. It takes a lot of effort to bring this content out. And so, you know, I'm appreciative of their time and for them continuing to show up. Very truly, I say this, you know very well, entrepreneurship is a roller coaster. Yeah. We're doing so good. Oh no, we're about to go out of business. Oh, today was a good day. Oh, and we know the dealers are dealing with this. And so, you know, I sincerely say and give my appreciation to the dealer community for what they do in the community, for the employers that they are, for the work that they do, for the desires they have. This is a very transformative moment in time, which means it's going to be very uncomfortable. But for those that continue to heed your counsel, to listen to what you're teaching, to listen to what is out there, and then apply it to the context of their circumstances, they're more powerful than they already are giving themselves credit for. Yeah. And so it's about each day at a time of trying something a little bit new and experimenting and going with it. And so thanks, Paul. Really appreciate you. Enjoy your friendship. And I'm grateful for you. And of course, all those that that have taken the time
Thank you.
today.
Me too. And one last question. The dealer playbook is available at...
Yes, the Dealer Playbook is available wherever you listen to podcasts. Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio. I don't know where the millions and millions of others that show up. You can now watch full episodes on YouTube.
The Spotify as well?
Spotify as well. Spotify is our second most popular app that you can listen. So if you're on Android, you can listen on Spotify or Google Podcasts or things of that nature. Of course, we're on Apple Podcasts. Love for you to check it out. Leave a subscribe, and a positive rating and review always helps.
That's the thing. Michael, thank you. En op dit verhaal sluiten wij af. Dank jullie wel. Vooral degenen die vanaf het begin aan het kijken zijn. We zijn bijna 2 uur onderweg. Met de voorbespreking zijn we in totaal 2,5 uur onderweg. Dus het was wel een dingetje. Was ook eigenlijk niet zo gepland. Maar nogmaals, ontzettend leuk om te doen. Dankzij onze partners natuurlijk mogen we dit altijd graag doen. Dus dank daarvoor. 23, 24 maart komt Brian Pest naar Nederland en naar België. Dus de 23e in Almere, de 24e in het voetbalstadion van Gent in België. En daarna gaan we ook proberen om de Duitse markt ook dezelfde content te kunnen leveren. Voor zover, dankjewel voor het kijken. Een fijn weekend en tot de volgende keer. Dank jullie wel.